Thank you, Braden. Wow. Nearly 3 decades after the fall of the Berlin Wall, Margit Wolf from the former East Germany lives on the edge of poverty. A career woman who studied business and worked in a firm from the 70s to the 90s, Wolf found herself stuck in a series of low-paying mini-jobs after reunification. Her pension, already diminished since the fall of the GDR, is now barely sustainable for her survival at a mere 2.07 euros a month. Quote, after reunification, divorced men had their pensions grandfathered in, but the ones for divorced women were just canceled, Wolf said in an interview. When you think of the reunification of Germany in 1990, your first thoughts would probably be about the fall of the Berlin Wall, improvements in standards of living, and a newly introduced system of democracy. And you would be completely correct. However, in the shadow of such a momentous historical occasion, we tend to overlook the impact on small or underprivileged groups of people. In this case, one of those groups was women. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Emma Gu, and today I will be placing the history of the German reunification under scrutiny from the perspective of women. To provide some historical context, the regime that presided over the lives of German women before either German state had been Nazi Germany. Fascist propaganda set back decades of progress in women's rights, forcing women into the role of Kinder, Kutschi, and Kirchi, revolving around children, kitchen, and church. Though female employment could not be entirely banned due to needing a large labor force, women lost crucial rights in the workforce, the family, healthcare, and more. After World War II and Germany's subsequent defeat, the country was split between the control of the Western capitalist countries and the Socialist Soviet Union. 2 new countries were formed, the FRG, West Germany, and the GDR, East Germany, under spheres of influence of 2 diametrically opposed ideologies. In the GDR, women as a whole achieved levels of career equality unthinkable in the West at the time. In 1989, just a year before its collapse, 89% of women in the GDR worked, which was one of the highest rates in the world at the time. Taking into account the fact that women had been shunned out of work just a few decades prior, this rate was an incredible improvement. The GDR did not simply stand and wait for progress to occur. Just the opposite. It was strongly involved through 3 major objectives in policy. The first of which was full legal equality between men and women. Pursued between 1946 until the 1960s, it aimed to integrate women into the workplace through work-family balance programs. Inexpensive daycare became widely accessible, and social benefits, such as additional pension for employed mothers, were introduced. The second was promotion of female work, lasting until 1971. It aimed to provide women with higher level education and advanced job training. While the first goal had allowed women to become regular workers, this objective increased the potential of female workers as more women received college education and worked in government. The third was special protection of mothers and children, setting up a standard of equity. It helped career-oriented women with their family lives and child rearing. Aside from additional improvements to childcare facilities and kindergartens, paid maternal leave was extended to 20 weeks. However, just on the other side of Germany, the reality women faced was much darker. Outlined in law, the role of women in the FRG differed little from what it had been under Nazi rule. Up until 1977, the marriage and family law stated, the wife is responsible for running the household. She has the right to be employed as far as this is compatible with her marriage and family duties. Employed mothers of West Germany were called Raven mothers, as they were thought to be uncaring towards their children. State policies worked actively to discourage working women. School hours were erratic and midday meals were not provided, meaning the work of employed mothers was incompatible with their children's needs. Childcare centers that were widely available in the GDR were also inaccessible. This led to many working mothers pursuing mini-jobs with shorter hours, like Margit Wolf. Unfortunately, most of these jobs required no skilled labor and thus had very low salaries, meaning the remaining working women were still far from financially independent. Part-time workers often received less than 20 hours, meaning they could not receive the same social benefits, including pension. Various pressures, from financial to political to social, clearly had their impact. In 1989, while 89% of women in the GDR were employed, that number was at 56% in the FRG, the majority of whom were working mini jobs. While the percentage of female workers consistently rose in the GDR, as the influence of the darker era was slowly shaken off and state policies to push equity and women's independence, women in the FRG struggled under a nation that subscribed to the same horrific views on women as were present under Nazi Germany far into the 20th century. Even as women's rights in the GDR saw upward progression, the government was quickly faltering by 1989. East Germans flooded into the more economically prosperous FRG through the GDR's Hungarian border. Soon it was clear that the days of a socialist East Germany were coming to an end, and on October 3rd, 1990, the FRG took over the GDR. As the GDR's government and economic model were destroyed and replaced with the FRG's, so did its policies towards women. First, the government of the FRG directly limited the bodily rights of women through a ban on abortion. Previously, women in the GDR enjoyed free and easily accessible abortion as part of women's healthcare and family planning. The new restriction on abortion was met with tension that lingers to the present. In fact, to this present day, abortion is illegal in Germany and can be met with jail time unless occurring in the first 12 weeks of pregnancy with a condition of mandatory counseling. Next, social benefits aimed towards assisting working mothers were restricted or withheld under the new government. As welfare policies were replaced by the FRG, cheap childcare facilities were either destroyed or privatized. In 1989, between 80 to 95% of all children under age 10 were estimated to be in free GDR childcare facilities. Thus, the sudden loss of free childcare meant that the overwhelming majority of working mothers were forced to try to adjust their work schedules or give up their careers entirely. Many chose mini jobs as a compromise between employment and motherhood, which ultimately entailed low wages and loss of welfare. Lastly, the most pronounced effect of this transition was demonstrated in the abrupt surge of unemployment and poverty in women. During the transition, West German companies brought up formerly state-controlled assets, so many were dissolved and those that were not were forced to adapt to a profit-motivated structure. When companies were forced to terminate unprofitable employees, the first to be fired were women, out of a combination of the cost of maternity leave and discrimination from West German superiors. Even by the year 2000, 10 years after the dissolution of the GDR, men's employment was down at 80% compared to a previous 92%. However, for women, it had gone from 89% to 72%. The number of working women decreased from 4.5 million to 2.8 million, meaning that a full 37% of working women lost their jobs in the transition period. The legacy of poverty, discrimination, and female suffering following the integration of the GDR into the FRG is complicated, but one simple truth is self-evident, that it was a tragedy by every sense of the word. A culture of female independence, financially and socially, was entirely replaced by one of subjugating women as the norms of the traditional FRG were imposed upon East Germany. The financial devastation of the transition is still in living memory, as women like Margit Wolf tell their stories of injustice and exploitation. While it is undeniably important to describe the positive effects of reunification and overall, the narratives continuously ignored or overshadowed by such are just as important to be placed under scrutiny. Thank you.